Israel is seen as this beloved country. And the Israelis themselves have not hesitated to go back to history and to go back to the Torah and say that we are chosen of God. And because we are chosen of God, we are different, we are unique. And because we are unique, we must be treated differently. And America, which has underwritten the state of Israel from its creation in 1948, has reinforced this so that the Israelis actually believe that they are special. They believe that they can do no wrong. They believe that they are God-guided. So when you are dealing with the people who believe that they are...
Welcome to Talk of Africa 360, your source for insightful news, analysis, and thoughtful commentary. If you value informed perspectives and fact-based reporting, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss an update. Disclaimer: the content on this channel is based on reliable public sources and credible online information. It is intended strictly for educational and analytical purposes. We do not promote or endorse political violence, hate speech, or any form of discrimination. Our goal is to inform, not to inflame. Thanks for being here. Let's stay informed together.
And they say that this Zionist regime must actually go. So that is the official stated position of the Iran regime or the Tehran regime. And the fact that then they started enriching uranium, almost reaching weapon-grade enrichment, then raised alarm, particularly in the United States of America and in Israel. And the argument that is being put forth by the Netanyahu regime is that they have credible evidence, or that they had credible evidence that the Iranians had crossed the red line in terms of enrichment, and that they cannot allow the regime to have a nuclear weapon. It is instructive that at the time when the attack on Iran took place, there was diplomatic effort, or there were diplomatic efforts which were being mediated in Saudi Arabia and within that particular environment, with a view to convincing the Iranians that they ought not to use the uranium for non-peaceful purposes. And to the casual observers, like all of us, we thought that they were going on very well. At least when you listen to the President of the United States of America, one took the view that the negotiations would give birth to a result which would be acceptable to all, and the International Atomic Energy was supervising. But for some reason, in what in the eyes of many appears to be a unilateral decision by the Israelis, but what we now know, had the nod of the United States of America, there is a conflagration which has resulted in a tit for tat and which is affecting populations. We have seen in the last one week the Israelis saying that they now have air domination over the whole of Tehran. We have seen the use of hypersonic missiles which have hit Tel Aviv and have hit Haifa. And for the first time, we see a disruption of normal life in Israel, which had not taken place during the conflict in Gaza, and even when the Houthis were launching their ballistic missiles from Yemen. The question is, should the world be worried? Yes, the world should be worried. The world should be worried because there is a powder keg. What one fears is that if indeed you are to hit some of the bunkers where the enriched uranium is stored, what would be the impact in terms of the pollution that would take place? Who else will be drawn into the conflict? Remember that the Tehran regime has a satellite or what one would call client organization that work with it or work for it. You talk about the Houthis, and that is in Yemen. You talk about the Hezbollah in Syria and in Lebanon. What will they do? And one can also not discount what is being heard in the grapevine, that the North Koreans have said, we are ready to help. The Chinese are also said to be said, we are ready to help, even if it is in a subterranean manner. And the United States of America thus far has not entered into the conflict directly, but we know that their military assets are moving closer and closer to the theater of war. So if those are the early signs of a war that is big, of course, I'm one who is slow to use the term world war, but there are those who are already saying that these are the early signs of a third world war. But I would be much more hesitant, because one can see that there are voices in different parts of the world that are calling on Israel and calling on Iran to step back and ask themselves what value is going to be achieved if the conflagration continues in the manner that it is. But as the saying goes, the jury is still out, there is a tit for tat, and there are internal contradictions, both in Israel and in Iran. In Iran, there are segments of the population who are anti the theocratic regime of the Ayatollahs, and they possibly think that this is an opportunity for regime change. Within Israel, there are those who are fatigued that there is little economic activity that is taking place in different parts of Israel. We know that Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv is almost out of commission or is under constant danger. A number of airlines are no longer flying to Tel Aviv. So all these factors conjoined is sending an unequivocal message to the players that diplomacy should be given its pride of place. As to whether that will happen is another debate. But I would want to imagine, as other commentators are saying, that it is critical that the United States of America enters into the arena of diplomacy, because they had initiated these negotiations, that if indeed they did so, then there would be a ceasefire, and that would create an environment where the parties who are actively in the theater of war would reassess their positions going forward. You know, it is a very complex situation. I have had an argument being put forth that the Iranians were going on with enrichment, all the negotiations notwithstanding, that the Iranians were not responding to the ultimatum that was given by the United States of America, and the President of the United States of America has actually said we gave them 60 days, and it's on the 61st day that we saw Israel do what they did. And further, it is also being said that they were engaged in proxy activities through the Houthis and even through Hezbollah. So what changed? I think a number of things changed, but as one must always do, is to look at the history of it. What is the history of it? That there are geopolitical reasons why the United States of America, which until a few years ago has been the hegemon, would want to ensure that it does not lose its foothold in that region, and that they would not allow a regime which they consider to be rogue in Tehran to have a military that has in its arsenal a nuclear device. So I think that when all these things were assessed, the Israelis must have received the green light. You go and test the waters. And it is also possible that the Israelis, when they entered into this arena, did not imagine that the response would be like it is. And right now, it is, as Shakespeare once said, that they have waded so deep into blood that to go forth is as tedious as to go back. And they find themselves between the devil and the deep blue sea in a catch-22 situation. The question is, what do you do? And that is why I think, therefore, that the voice, for example, of the United Nations, for whatever it is worth, because the United Nations now has become such a weak organization whose resolutions are honored in breach, and other players that are interested in this particular situation. So there are many moving parts in this particular situation. And those parts are such as to send danger signs to America and to Israel, and they could wait no more. But we cannot forget that there are other activities that are going on in the world. One cannot forget that there is activity between Russia and Ukraine. One cannot forget that there are activities within the Middle East, as it is called now. One cannot forget that there is a rising power in China, and that all these factors are also making the United States a little bit worried, and they do not want a client state, if one may, of a side that is not there.
As reactions continue to pour in from across the continent, one thing is clear. Africa is demanding respect, sovereignty, and accountability. Was this just a diplomatic misstep or a deeper sign of shifting global alliances? We'll be watching closely. If you found this story important, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real, unfiltered African news. This is Talk of Africa 360, telling the stories that matter.